So welcome back to episode 3, discussing the options for the Seawind 1370. Today I have the dream team. I've got Mike, general manager at Seawind Factory, and James, the production manager for the Seawind 1370. The reason I have both of these guys here today is because we are discussing the electrical options on the Seawind 1370, and these are extensive and complicated, and so for this I've got both of them. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
We're going to go through these options one by one. So Mike, I'm going to just let you take the baton.
Yeah.
Where are we going to start?
Well, we'll start with a really easy one that I can handle. The 12-volt outlets. I mean, we'll just run through the options as they are on the website, but fairly straightforward. I mean, on the boat we've got a number of standard additions or inclusions in terms of USB outlets and 12-volt outlets. So the first option that we've got on our list is just a standard 12-volt cigarette lighter style outlet. So you have one standard on the boat already, and it's just a case of adding additions if you want to. Quite often nowadays people are just going with USBs, but we do generally keep one old sort of style cigarette lighter on the boat as standard. So that's a fairly straightforward one. Then we go on to the other USB outlets that are on the boat. So as standard, we have 5 USB outlets, which are in one of each of the cabins. So you've got 3 cabin USB outlets, and then you've got one in the galley, and then you have one at the nav area. So as standard, those are USB-A and USB-C dual fittings. USB-C, I think we'll see that coming sort of more prominent as the Europeans are moving to say that's what they wanted to have as their standardised USB fitting. So I think we'll see that coming through. But at this stage, we're still going with the dual fitting. So they're the standard items, and then it's best actually looking at the technical book that we've got. There's some really good images showing where we've got recommended locations for optional additional USB outlets. But ultimately, you can add as many as you wish. Okay. Third one is a fairly straightforward USB, just a dual older style USB-A fitting, which is fine if people want to do that. I think the other thing to note also is people ask, now that we've got a 24-volt boat, how do I still have a 12-volt USB outlet? But the reality is, the USBs are all 5-volt. They all have a step down on them anyway, so it doesn't matter whether you're 12 or 24. The typical fittings that we're buying can handle both voltages, and they step it down to 5 volts.
Can I just ask, because we had a problem with Ruby Rose on this, where you've got a twin USB port, what is the combined ampage that comes out of those, the current? Because that's how you're going to charge iPads. We could never charge an iPad and a phone with those. So James, do you know that?
The one that's the A and C, these are high powered, so because we're running 24 volt, we can run high powered charging port on those.
Cool.
I've just forgotten what the wattage is of it, but it's a lot.
But the base ones are, because there are a broad range of outlets that you get, and you can, it's like when you go and buy this sort of stuff at the shops, you go and buy a USB charger and it's got a 1 amp charge or something, it's pretty much useless. So no, the base ones we've got are sort of the highest output that we can get. And it's worth noting also that things will change. It may be that when we look at this in a year's time, USB-As are really phasing out and we're all USB-Cs, but we'll just keep with what's relevant at the time.
Cool.
Okay, then the next item to go down to is batteries. So the base boat comes with AGM batteries. Okay, that's both an AGM for your house and AGM for your start. AGMs come in 12 volt, not 24 volt. So when we look at the amps on there, we on our options, we've actually got 2 AGMs doubled up in series to give you the 24 volt AGM house bank. So you've got 270 amps in 240 as your house bank for AGM. So if you're staying with AGMs, when you upgrade to put additional AGM house bank capacity in there, you're actually optioning 2 extra batteries because we have to put them in to load them up to get them in 24. Okay, so that's fairly straightforward. The boat also has 2 AGM start batteries as standard. Okay. There was a bit of discussion about whether we're doing 1 or 2, and we've decided to keep them as 2 independent systems for each engine. Okay. That was the easy one. Then we go to our lithium upgrade. Okay. So the lithium battery bank. So we're using Mastervolt lithium batteries, and the upgrade is to take away the AGM house bank and go to a 400 amp lithium pack. Okay. Now we can obviously add to that, but we'll go further down the line. We then have to look at why do we do that, and what benefits do we get, and what does it mean to the start system and the charging. Okay, so the big benefit with lithium is that you've got far more usable capacity. So the AGMs, you're really only able to use 50% thereabouts of what you've got as your full battery bank, whereas the lithium, you can bring that down to 10-15% of the listed amperage. So for 400 amp hours in 24 volt, you're able to use 360 of that capacity, which is just a complete game changer. The other aspect about lithium, obviously, is that you can recharge it very, very quickly, which is it's actually a significant advantage on a boat, because sometimes you've got power for a short period and you want to get everything you can from it, whereas when you've got an AGM bank, sometimes you in order to get it back up to 100%, you've actually got to sort of go through and use your charging for a much longer period of time, whether that's engines or solar or whatever it might be. So there's huge advantages of lithium, and we're seeing, especially boats of this size and beyond, that really people are going to lithium very regularly. Yeah. Okay. James, do you want to talk through the charging, the alternators, the DC-DC charging aspect of the lithium upgrade?
A couple of questions about the batteries themselves, because I think it's important, because we get a lot of this on our social media. Number one, weight savings between lithium and just standard AGMs. Lithium are lighter considerably, I should imagine.
I don't know the exact weight difference, but they're definitely lighter.
There's a weight consideration to make. Another question we get a lot is, because I know that lithium batteries have to be installed in a slightly different way to make sure that, for instance, the alternators are protected, so you don't discharge them hugely and fry your alternators. So we are getting the question, can I take the standard AGMs and then just drop in lithiums down the line?
You could, but there would be a lot of rework to do, because with lithium it has a different charging algorithms to AGM, so it's different chemistry in the way that the power in lithium works as to AGM. So you have to program the voltages that go in for recharging very different to AGM. So it's not a simple just swap out kind of situation. Okay. It really needs to be set up from the beginning. You can, people obviously retrofit their boats to lithium, but it's a fairly major upgrade. They've often got to change the chargers or reprogram them.
Yeah, it's pretty significant.
It's a fairly big thing.
So the whole thing about a drop-in solution is just, it's not true. So just be aware. We found this with Ruby Rose. There is a lot of rework to do to upgrade.
But we actually just did last year we did a pack. We supplied a pack for a customer on one of the smaller boats changing over from AGM to lithium. And there's quite a significant amount of gear that goes into it, because you really, to get the full benefit, you want to get bigger alternators and different charging systems. So it's quite a comprehensive kit that went over, and it took best part of a week to sort out for an electrician. So it's certainly not a quick and easy thing to do.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Alternators and charging. Yeah.
So because of what we just talked about with the different charging arrangements, we add an extra alternator to each engine. So it comes with an alternator, but that is just exclusive for recharging the start batteries. So then we add a second one, which is then dedicated to charge the lithium house bank. And there's one on each engine, and they're rated at 24 volt at 150 amps. So the combined of those, 300 amps, you can recharge your batteries pretty much.
300 amps in 24, that's plenty of power.
So we have had this question, and the question is, and you just answered, there's an extra alternator on each engine, it's not just on one engine.
No, it's on both engines.
Good, thanks for answering
Absolutely.
that.
So it means you can just run one engine if you want. So if you're doing a motor tail,
Yeah.
you can be recharging the house bank regardless of which engine you're running at the same time as doing your sailing.
Okay. And just a question, because we've got asked this, and it's a real curveball, like nerd question, but we get asked it more often than we should do, which is how much extra fuel does it take to run the extra alternator because of this extra load you're putting on it? Minimal is what I think.
Yeah, it's very little. And the reality is that you're not on
That's an interesting question. It's like asking what's your fuel efficiency if you turn the aircon in your car. You know, I mean, I don't know, but does anybody turn it off?
We had this whole thing a few years ago. We did this really deep dive into what happens if you just run your engine on idle to charge your batteries. Does it glaze the boards? And we went through this whole thing with an engineer, called Viv Cox, who works. He tends to answer a lot of things in the British press about engineering, and he's like, it's about a 1 to 2% load an alternator puts on an engine, and that load is enough to stop your force and glazing. That's what we come up with. Someone will come up with a different answer, but that's what we understand.
You'll probably find you'll need to run the engines at around 1500 revs to really get the maximum amps from the alternators. At idle, you're probably only going to get maybe 70% of its max charge.
We
just
actually
need a little bit of revs just to...
We found that when we were chartering the 1260. One of them had lithium batteries, and yeah, there is a point at which your rev range and you can see what's going into the C zone. So yeah, works pretty well.
So just to tidy it up, so you've got two start batteries which remain as AGMs. So when you do the lithium, that's just for the house only. The engines need a different type of they need good cold cranking amp batteries to start the engines. So they remain as AGM batteries. As James said, we keep the existing alternators and they're used to charge those AGMs only. So when the motors are running, you've got your start battery being charged. But what we also do is you can't parallel your AGM with the lithium, impossible. So you have to keep those as completely separate systems. So then we put a DC to DC charger. So we have a unit that connects the lithium bank, house bank, through a DC charger to the start battery. So should for any reason you've got a dead start battery, you can actually charge your start battery AGM from your lithium bank, right. So that you've got the ability to put power into that start battery in case you need to. But I mean, realistically, a start battery that's in a system which is really only there to start the engine and has its own alternator, it's something's wrong. If you're using your boat, something's wrong if your start battery is running low.
Yeah,
but it's just that sort of safety factor, redundancy, in case
you've got isolators on there for when you. I mean, they're on the 1260. So I mean, this is just. It was always good practice for us when we were at anchor just to isolate the starter battery just in case there was a discharge.
Exactly. So, yeah. And then the alternators that we're putting on with the lithium bank, which is the Alpha Pro, they're a Mastervolt supplied alternator. Obviously, when you want to sort of see what you're getting in through that. So the base boat comes with the EasyView 5 digital display, which is the monitoring system. So that's the Mastervolt monitoring system that we have at the nav desk, so you can look at all of your bank, house bank and start bank capacity and state of charge, that sort of stuff. So when we connect the Alpha Pro alternator and regulator, you're getting that information supplied through onto the EasyView 5 display, so you can actually see what you've got coming through from the alternators. Yeah. So that's a digital monitoring system, not switching, monitoring system that we have as standard. So all of that stuff ties in nicely so that you can see how much power you're getting through and going into lithium. Cool. Yeah, okay. I think that's pretty much everything. And then, I mean, the next option is just more of the same, and upgrading to have an additional 200 amp hour 24 volt lithium as well. So just for those that feel like they need more power. Okay. The next item is C-Zone AC, and then also we've got C-Zone digital switching in DC. So, James, you want to take that one?
Yeah, okay. So the C-Zone digital switching, I guess, is the easiest way is to describe it. C-Zone is the brand name of it. So this effectively eliminates your traditional circuit breaker board that you would have on your boat, and you now go into a digital type system. Where it comes into its own is that it becomes very, we can program it to suit the person on board. So we can set up modes. So when you come on the boat, instead of having to flick all the circuit breakers, you can push, day sailing, and it'll automatically put on all the things you need for day sailing, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Or if you're night sailing, you can, hit the button night sailing, and then even then you can still go in and manually, adjust things. But you also get the monitoring, so all the stuff that you get from Master Vault can also integrate into C-Zone, so you can get all that monitoring coming across into there as well, so you can get it all. And then C-Zone also integrates into B&G. So you can also get that up on the multi-function display as well.
Yeah, so you can actually, therefore, from your chart plotter, you can start controlling the C-Zone content as well. So you can start switching items on and off from your chart plotter at the helm, for example.
Cool. Yeah. And the other advantage is that it's got a built-in Wi-Fi. You can then sync it. They have an app, so you can add it to your tablet, and you go down. You can be sitting in your bed at night and working out your plan, what you're doing the next day. And you don't have to go up to the nav station and go and look. And
interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of advantages with it.
Yeah. So now there's two options there. There's the AC and the DC. Certainly, I mean when you look at what we've got on the boat, and the amount of switching you really need to do, the DC really is more commonly optioned. There's a lot of DC on the boat, makes a lot of sense. A lot of people are taking that. The AC is just a case of, it's nice to have both set up, but probably less. If you have to pick one or the other, then the DC is going to be something you're going to be using a lot more, I think, because you're monitoring all of that DC setup through the C-Zone. You can also, there's a question that came up recently as well, is because we have another option for dimmable lights. Yes, if you have C-Zone, you can control the light dimmers through that as well. So you can control all your lights, you can control all of your appliances, anything that's in the boat that's got the DC system connected to it. So, yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, so the next item is dual voltage charging. Okay, so yeah. We've actually been talking about this with a lot of customers because we've got a good mix of people that are from the US and from Europe or Australia. And there's a lot of discussion because I think most people are saying this boat is full blue water cruising, I'm going around the world, which voltage should I go with? And yeah, I think there's a lot of sort of variables in that. I mean, primarily you've got to understand where's the boat going to be most, where's your home, and where do you realistically, how long are you going to be out of that area, out of that territory? If you're a US customer that sees themselves as being in the US predominantly, but you do want to do some sailing but coming back to the States, then go 110, and the same in reverse. But what we're finding is that most people are actually wanting some ability to be able to be out of territory in a different voltage. So that's fine, we can handle that. So it's a case of typically you sort of need to nominate what you want on your boat. If you want to set it up as a 110 volt boat as standard, that's fine, or 230. But what we're able to do is offer dual voltage charging. So with the Master Vault system, they have you have to nominate your combi inverter charger. You're either a 110 or you're a 230. But for the battery chargers themselves, just the independent ones, they can handle either voltage. So what we therefore recommend is that you nominate that you're going to be say a 110 boat, but we have independent from that, we have a dual voltage charger, so that if you are in a territory where you've got 230 volts only, you can go to the dock, you can charge your house bank, and then you run your boat off your house bank as you would do normally. Same in reverse, obviously. If you're a 230 boat and you're in the States, then you can charge using you can run the boat by charging the house bank through the dual voltage charger.
Can I just clarify, because we get this question a lot, and I think, so just to clarify, that is simply for charging. Your GPO sockets, your power sockets on the boat, have to be specified as 110 or 220 before you set off. They're not dual voltage.
No. Correct, right. Yes.
That's very important to understand. And also, we talked about this last week on our live stream about your cruising plans. And I think it's things that you need to prepare for when you're cruising, especially if you're doing long-term cruising. There are only 3 countries in the world that use 110, America, Canada, and Brazil. And so outside of those 3 countries, you need 220. Now that means that if you are going off and sailing around the world, and your blender or your TV breaks or whatever breaks, you have to replace it with a 110 if you've got a 110 boat. And you won't be able to buy those products. And we struggled with this when we were in the US because we could only buy 110, and we actually had to go and find 220 products for the boat.
Yeah, so it's probably, I mean, there's a whole series of options that are sort of interlinked to this, in that we've got, because there's a discussion there about isolation transformers and then inverter chargers as well. So, so if we just sort of go back, sort of just slightly away from the options, but when you set your boat up, you are going to need an inverter charger on the boat, typically. So let's say we are going to have a 230 volt boat. You'll have a inverter charger, which when you go to shore power, you can plug in and you can charge your batteries, but you can also run the boat straight through. You can run your GPOs, run your power outlets straight from the shore power going through that system. Okay. Now, what is recommended to go with that is also an isolation transformer. The isolation transformer is all about protecting the boat, and there's 2 versions. You've either got an isolation transformer or you've got a galvanic blocker, which is a more basic version. So the isolation transformer, and perhaps James, you might want to, I'm going to throw you right in, you want to explain exactly the detail of how it protects your boat, and then the difference between that and the galvanic blocker, and why we use one for one, why we use one for the other.
The isolation transformer literally is, there's no direct connection between it, so there's it's split in 2. There's power coming in, there's no wire that allows the current to transfer across, so it completely isolates. The galvanic blocker, it takes the earth and effectively does a similar job, but you're only plugging the earth into one side and the earth out the other side. So it's to stop those stray currents and things, eating away all your zincs and all the other problems that come with it, corrosion.
Yeah.
So it's, for years we've always used a galvanic blocker and they've been relatively successful, but as time goes on, people now are realising that the isolation transformer is a much safer, more guaranteed way.
It's more robust in terms of the protection, and it sort of really depends on partly. It's an environmental thing. You guys would have experienced this as well. You've been cruising around the world. That different areas have different issues, and some, if you go to a marina where everything's, you've got first class electrical connections, and it's probably less risk than if you go to a more remote area where you've got guys with plugs and sockets and stuff hanging over the side of the marina, and
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I kind of think the way that it works, we were in the Caribbean for 2 years. I don't think we spent more than 10 days in a marina. It's just not a thing. It's the Caribbean, and all that cruising is not set up for marinas, whereas Europe and America is very much marina based. So there is a lot to discuss regarding where your cruising ground is and the availability of marinas, whether they're shabby or well appointed.
So the reason why I sort of raised the difference between those 2, isolation transformer versus galvanic blocker, what we're recommending is that you set your boat up, and the recommended would be to have a shore power connection with isolation transformer going through to your combi unit, and that's the voltage that you're running your boat for when you're in your home territory or your primary voltage setup. The alternative voltage, we're saying, okay, we're going to plug in, and we're not going to be running through the system. We're going to be just charging the lithium bank typically, and run the boat from the house bank. So therefore we have a dual voltage charging system, and it's recommended that we put in a galvanic blocker, which is the lesser of those two protections, but still very effective. We've been installing them for years for that secondary system. Okay. All right. Next, we've got the 110 Fisher pounder generator. That's the 10,000i. That's and then also you've got the 240 version as well. So that's a 7.2 continuous output kilowatt generator, and that's a variable rate generator. So it's basically the RPM effectively is dictated by the demand. So it'll go up and down depending on what you've got going on. So for some people, I mean, this is an option, especially with the lithiums coming through, that we're seeing is often paired with people that want dive compressors and real heavy load components on board.
There is actually a really good 12 volt dive compressor that's just come out from Mantis, I believe. So there is, I think the efficiency of 12 volt motors now is actually removed. On the dive compressor thing, you can get far more compact things, but if you want to try and run a commercial dive operation, you need to charge multiple cylinders from a single, a big compressor unit, then that may come in, but I'm not going to comment on generators because I find them to be just my bête noire. All I'd say is we are seeing a shift in how many boats are having generators specified, but for some they're still there as a robust means to generate power. So the next item we've got is interior mood lighting, and again the lighting is probably best to refer to the technical book that we have, where it actually shows where all the lighting is. But this is essentially just nice soft lighting that goes around the sort of the galley, lower units, and I think we've got some around the nav area, and it's just that it just makes the boat look very nice actually. Absolutely.
And just some additional sort of soft lighting features. Yeah. Okay. Next item is inverter chargers in all their shape and form. Again, James, that might be one that you want to talk through. We've got the 220, the 110, and then the combination inverter charger.
Yeah. So as we refer to them as a combi, but yes, they're inverter / charger, so that does both functions. It's also a switch, so when you plug in the shore power, it's smart enough to determine that, okay, I don't need to use the battery, I can use shore here, and so that's all incorporated in the same unit. So for the 110, we have a 4,500 is the watts of inverting. Nice. So that should power your all electrical AC devices as you...
Is that new? Because last time I looked at those, they were 3,500, so they must have upscaled.
There's a new one that's come out, yes.
So
it's 4.5, for the 110. For the 220, we've got 3.5. It's the same thing, just in a 220 version, but not as high wattage. So again, it kind of depends on what you're putting on your boat, but you probably don't need all of that if you don't have a lot of high power devices on your boat, but it's available to you.
So just going back, when you've got the shore power connected, anything that you've got running on your 230 or 110 volt system will be powered straight from shore. These days we're putting the aircon, we are putting the aircon through the lithium or through the DC system. So when you're plugged in to a marina, say, and you've got your aircon running, it's still going through the lithium system, but you've got obviously the inverter charger is charging that at the same time. So it's fairly it's easy enough to do that. So. Yeah, okay. Next item. Actually, we've got the other inverter charger option there, which is the 7,000 watt 200 amp inverter charger. So that's really a case of doubling them up to get more available power through the inverter.
7,000 watt. What are you doing? Running a pneumatic drill?
There are people that sort of come from an environment where they've had low power, low consumption on their mind because they've on smaller boats, and they really are quite efficient. And there are some people that are saying, well, at home I have this, this, and this, and why not option it up so I can run that? So it's a lot. But when you've got certainly if you've got like the electric oven, that's a big drawer of power. What are some of the other high load items? Washing machine.
Yeah, washing machine, induction stoves.
Yeah.
I guess
induction stove. Yeah, that's a decent amount of power. Typically, you put it on, and if you crank it right up, that's a lot of power required.
I think we've only got one, and we're having the combi induction gas.
Yeah.
We're also aware that we can't run a hairdryer, coffee machine, and all the other bits at the same time. Frying the system.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, next items we've already covered, which is the isolation transformer.
Yep.
Then we're going down to some of the light aspects. So we've got the LED mega beam deck light upgrade, and then you've also got this. It's the same unit for the LED mounted floodlight. So on the mast we've got a deck and steaming combo light. When you option this LED mega beam light, we separate those. Then we just have a single steaming light, and then the deck light is a much sort of higher powered deck light. Pretty straightforward. The stern mounted floodlight is the same light. It's a Hella light, and it's just mounted on the back of the boat on the cockpit roof, just facing down, really over your dinghy. It's pretty handy when you're bringing the dinghy in and putting it up on the davits. It's just to be able to have good light.
Squid light, is it?
Yeah, squid light is what we call it on the other boat. Yeah, for good reason. Okay, next item, light dimmers. So this is if you want to have the dimmers, but you don't have C-zone, DC C-zone, then you need to select this option to be able to have dimmable lights in the saloon. And
okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that, because we definitely asked for dimmers, but I didn't realise that C-zone incorporated that standard.
Yeah, so C-zone has the dimmer function within it, whereas if you don't have the C-zone, we have to buy the dimmer unit in order to be able to do the light dimmers. Okay, lightning protection. This is a setup that we've had, a very similar setup for many years at Seawinds, and we've been doing them on the smaller boats. Essentially what we're doing is we're trying to create a pathway for a lightning strike to go through and then go down through the earth plate. So on an aluminium mast, we mount a rod at the top, and that rod must be, I don't know, probably...
That's probably nearly a metre.
Is it? Yeah.
900, I think.
Yeah, 2 to 3 foot long, and that gets bolted to the side of the mast and then is elevated above all other equipment, so it's the highest point on the mast. And then the conductor is actually the mast itself. So at the base of the mast, we then have a high voltage cable which is connected to the base of the mast, and that then goes down as in a shorter path as possible to a moonraker earth plate, which is a through hull fitting. So essentially we're giving a pathway for that power to go through the boat. Okay.
Interesting.
Now we install that to the standard, the Australian standard for commercial vessels, which was the sort of the highest specification. It's, I think it's slightly over ISO.
It's way over ISO.
Way over ISO, yeah. So it's to a standard. We've had people ask us if we've had boats that have been struck by lightning that have that versus not. We don't know, actually. We haven't had anyone that's got that system installed that's had a lightning strike that's said that it hasn't worked, but they might not have known that they've had a lightning strike off the boat. We really don't know. And certainly I remember when they were developing the standards for the commercial vessels in Australia, it was very much a bit of an unknown science, but this is the recommended pathway to move forward. But I don't think there are any guarantees for how lightning behaves.
Well, no, I don't think it stops you from getting hit by lightning. I think it just, if you do get hit, it deflects you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, guys, what have we got next?
Okay, we've just got the shore power and GPO, shore power connection and GPO galvanic blocker. So this is sort of the minimum requirement to be able to get your shore power on the boat. So we've got currently on our options, we've got that set up for obviously 110 to 230 or 240, and then we've got different outlets as well. So we've got a European outlets option, and we're just about to put on an Australian plug outlet. So these are the power outlets, the GPOs, the general purpose outlets. So there's a few there, but basically everything we talk about is the same. It's about being able to plug in at the dock. We use a galvanic blocker as a base level here. We have the isolation transformer, which is the superior protection, which you can have as additional option on top of this. Going through to as standard for these options, doesn't matter which one whether you're 110, 230, you have three sets of power outlets on the boat. So they're double outlets.
Yep.
In the galley, the nav, and one in the saloon, I think.
So yeah.
Yeah, all on the in the technical file, all in the GPO electrical layout book. So
You can have additional ones. You can just specify additional ones as you want to.
Exactly right. So yeah, and it really depends on what people plan to do. Additional GPOs down in the guest cabins and things are quite easily done, and they're just on our technical. In the technical book, there's a drawing that's got the standard layout, and then it's also got the recommended locations where you may want to put additional GPOs if you want to. But certainly, I mean, we've had people sort of say, "Oh, I'm doing something slightly different. Can I have a GPO here?" We'll look at it and say, typically, yes, it's quite easy to do, but we try and lay out a recommendation.
And you can have one just in the cockpit that's waterproofed, or in a place that doesn't attract water.
Yeah.
Like it's a locker or something.
Yeah, it needs to go in like a splash-proof casing.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
For the US boats, we actually have to do something slightly different. They have to have a GFCI type outlet for wet zones, so that would be bathrooms and exterior, as opposed to ISO, which doesn't require that because it goes through an RCBO, which is part of the general system, so it's slightly different, but it still comes with a splash-proof case.
Now, there's a question about the actual what we supply as our GPO for 110 or for 230, and whether that actually incorporates a USB fitting on there as well.
Yep, they do. So the actually the website's not showing the current one. I had to do a fair bit of homework because we wanted to get the USB A and C on the GPOs, and because C is relatively new still, we had to do a fair bit of research to find all the ones to suit the different zones around the world. So we have managed to do that. So you now can get the US ones with, other than the wet zones are exclusively just the GPO. They don't have the USBs, but all the normal ones do. The Euro ones, the Australian ones, and the UK SIM also have both USBs.
So that's that's good. That's positive. So that's, and it's sort of worth saying, as of April 2022, our spec is, therefore, that we will have USB-C, USB-A on each of the GPOs, which are double GPOs. So,
and do you know what the power output of the wattage you can get from the USB-C on that? Is it like anything significant?
I can't remember now, to be honest.
The reason is that as soon as you start getting above 20 watts, you can start charging laptops without a laptop charger, and that is a game changer for people that want to work remotely.
Yeah, obviously these ones are powered through the inverter because they're through the AC system, whereas the other type that we talked about earlier, the smaller ones, they powered through the DC system. So
no, I'm just wondering for the GPOs, because you are running like a much higher wattage coming through those if you're trying to power like a kettle. I just wonder what the output from the USB-C is.
Well, so why don't we get some spec and we can put it on the follow-up. Okay, so we've got some fairly straightforward, just different plug types. They're straightforward, and as I said, the technical book's got the layout as to where we can put things. Next item, which we could do as a whole session, and we already have, is solar power.
Strap in.
Yeah, exactly.
4 Vietnamese coffees, please. Off we go.
So let's just start with the base boat. And again, this content's in the technical book, which is actually quite well laid out. It's got a lot of information there. The base boat comes with 2 solar panels, has a solar regulator, MPPT regulator as standard, the master volt system. So this is all about moving up from that point. So we've got one option here to upgrade to 960 watts with 2 regulators, and then we've got a subsequent option which is to go to 1920 watts with 3 regulators. Okay.
Which I think is the option we've chosen. But
Yeah.
it is the option we've chosen, yeah.
Dare we open Pandora's box?
This is line from Notting Hill. I knew a girl called Pandora. I never saw a box. Okay.
I guess probably the question that still seems to circulate is all about regulators. And James, perhaps you just want to just briefly talk about why we have 3 regulators when we go to the higher level, and why we only have 2 regulators as opposed to people requesting, can I have 1 regulator per panel?
Yeah, so really it comes down to how the thing's wired up is essentially where we're at. So you could put 1 regulator per solar panel, and I think the only reason you would do that would be some kind of redundancy. There's no more efficiency in having, you could do it as just 1 regulator to do the whole lot, as opposed to having 1 on each panel. And then you would get the same amount of power. There's no real advantage. So it's all about how it's wired in. So if you can wire them in parallel, so that if this one drops out, all those others are still driving energy into the chargers.
So the shading, this is what we, look, with Ruby Rose we had 4 panels, 400 watt panels, 1 MPPT controller, and it never caused a problem for us because we always understood that there would always be shade. You can't not have shade on a bloody great boat with a big 20-metre stick hanging up in, going straight up. So what a lot of people say is, well, look, I want to put these 1 controller per panel, therefore if 1 panel gets shaded, I only lose that little bit, or I don't, and so they're talking about efficiency. I personally think that you're never going to get anything more than 70% efficiency from your solar panel banks at midday in the Caribbean. Trying to push this efficiency up, it's you're getting false returns on it. That's my thought on it. That you know,
if all your panels are wired in parallel, it doesn't matter, because if you get 1 shaded, then the others will still function at full capacity, or whatever that happens to be the amount of sun that it's able to convert.
Right.
So if they were all wired in series as 1 group going in and 1 panel shaded, then you're going to lose the whole lot.
Okay.
So it all comes down to how they're wired up.
Yeah.
Can I ask another question? Sorry. There's always a follow-on question when it comes to solar.
I did open the box. Come on. Let's go.
So I talked to Shane about this like a long while back, maybe a year ago. And what he was saying is that the way that the 1370 is being designed is as a balance, the whole power thing. They've done a lot of work with how the boat is powered, how the batteries work. And essentially what he was saying is that the solar array is matched to the battery bank, which is then matched to the needs that the boat will have. So where you get people going, I'm going to stick like 4 times the amount of lithium in because, you know, I want the extra capacity. Shane was saying at the time, well, there's no point because the solar won't charge all that in a likely amount of time. Similarly, there's no point in having a massive solar bank if you've got a tiny little battery bank. So can you just elaborate on that point that it's all matched like some sort of like supermodel which is accessorized well?
Well, look, I mean, certainly, I'll sort of take a start on it. Yes, we have done a lot of modelling, and it's sort of, we were doing this on the 1600 as well for just understanding what are the needs of a couple, or then you go to a family, and just plugging through with all these scenarios and saying, okay, so we're sailing at night time with the autopilot and, you know, rough sea conditions, and we've got all this sort of, we've got a fridge and a freezer running, with just all that scenario. Then we also then go, well, okay, we've got someone that's just, you know, a couple that are sailing, daytime sailing only, you know, and you kind of work through, well, what are the power demands, what's the capacity that we need to deal with that, and then how do we have enough power regenerated to fill that back in so that at the beginning of each day we're good to go again. So we've done a lot of modelling on that sort of side of things. So that's what, that's what Shane's talking about there. Yeah, certainly, I mean, people definitely need to understand that we have amazing technology that's come through to our industry in the last few years and accessible at a reasonable price, but you have to still step back to, it's your boat, you're in control, and you have to monitor things. You have to be power conscious if you are running low. You need to know when to put power back in if you need to. You need to know when to just dial things down a little bit, because we've had a few cloudy days and my battery bank's not as it should be, or I need to run my motors. There's still there's sort of I see a bit of a mindset of we'll just put a heap of power on there and then we won't have to think about it. Wrong. You have to think about it. If you're the skipper or the owner on the boat, you have to monitor things.
Am I correct? Because when we chartered those two 1260s, we had one with AGMs and one with the Lithium. So the Lithium system shuts down. It's a self-shutdown system.
Correct.
When it gets to a certain point. What I would say about the Lithium system, and I believe that the 1260 that we had only had one smart alternator on it. The 3070's got two. So the whole point, on average, with the usual shouting at each other trying to get out of an anchorage or into an anchorage, the motoring in and out of an anchorage takes 20 to 30 minutes. And if you are running those engines at 1500 revs, and if even when you're tying up, you just put the boat into neutral and keep a little bit of load on, are we going to be putting 200 to 300 amps into your batteries for half an hour? So, that is, you're looking at 150 amp hours going in to your battery, just getting into the anchorage and getting out the other side.
Yep.
So, from our point of view, it was never an issue keeping those lithium battery packs topped up. We never at any point thought, this is what we do. The AGM is very different. We had to run those the engine quite a lot, because we didn't have the smart alternators, and then they didn't have capacity, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's why lithium is just such a game changer for people to be able to top things up quickly and with those big alternators, definitely. But yes, everything affects something else in terms of the boat. And if you do go for an extra lithium battery, then you need to sort of say, well, why do you need it, and what is it that you're going to be doing, and then how do you put the power back in again? So if you go for an extra lithium battery, are you getting the largest solar bank? Or you have to think about or vice versa. If you go the largest solar, do you need to if you haven't got the extra lithium? But what is it why? Are you just in an area where you've got less sun and therefore anticipating that, or is it just
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because even if you had less sun, you're not going to put the extra lithium in and not go. Well, if you get the lithium anyway, you've got these two alternators.
Yeah.
And they put so much charge in. I find it. I can't. I mean, obviously there are scenarios where the extra lithium battery is important, but when do you need to hold that much charge and not be able to regenerate? I mean, maybe if you were sailing in winter in really high latitudes where there wasn't much sun and you refused to start your engines.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe.
Or if you're running your aircon a lot, that's the extra capacity to run aircon, for a significant amount of time. Yeah. But then if you're going to do that, then okay. So at the end of the night or in the morning, you come back. Okay, the aircon's gone down, so you've either got that person's either got to have more solar going in, or they've got to have a mindset, well, perhaps I need to run my engines. Depends. It may be that they're in an environment where they can actually get everything topped up using the standard solar, but everything has you change one thing, it has an effect on something else.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's like relationships.
Quiet in the back there.
Holding right.
All right, next one's back to some of the easy stuff. Transom step lights, so they're pretty straightforward.
Yep.
And I think we've got we can either have them in white or in blue, and they're just a case of they actually look very nice, but just sort of accent lights, just a single light pointing down. Underwater lights times 2. We can actually do. We've done multiples as well, and they're an aqualuma light that we use, and you have to nominate the colour. We were asked whether we have lights that you can change the colour. No, just you're white or blue, I believe.
Yeah.
And we have done them where they are on the centre line, behind the rudders, looking aft. We've had them I think they're quite nice if you have them on the transom just pointing in, so pointing in towards the dinghy. And then we've also done boats where we've had lights, midship pointing outboard as well. So you can choose where you have them, as long as we've got enough space in the
I know I should
bilge.
We're having them, I love them. This idea of my boat.
We used to say them in the Caribbean all the time.
Dreadful people with it. And now
Two, please.
2 sets, red at the front, blue at the back, and purple in the middle.
So we can find out where it is the anchorage.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, washing machines, either 110 or 230. So the washing machine option goes in the starboard bathroom. So you're in the bathroom, so looking forward, and you've got it overhead. So fairly straightforward. It's a front-loading unit, 3.5 kilos. Not much.
It's a dryer combo, so.
Yeah.
Is it a microwave dryer or is it an air dryer? Someone asked this question.
Oh, I didn't think it was a microwave one. I thought it was
air.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
it's pretty straightforward.
That's the end of our electrical.
Okay, brilliant. So, electricals, really complicated subject. Thank you both to Mike and to James. We'll be back again with chapter 4, which deals with the next aspect, I believe, is engine controls and other things to make your sailing more efficient. So I hope you enjoyed that. See you again soon.